The EU comes to the rescue of gamers, problems with DLCs and ACEvo x2 right here, right now. Greetings Romy, you're watching WromWrom, the channel sharing the joy of sim racing and a regular news roundup, our weekly sim racing news. I'm Serta and I'll be the host for this video. Once again we have kinda small news, but they are so many and partially so important, we didn't want you to wait a week until you hear them. And don't forget our 12 hours of Notchlife next Saturday, collecting donations for the fight against cancer. Drive for Dean 2026 on the 2nd of May. But now, the news. By all accounts, the Stop Killing Games, now renamed Stop Destroying Games initiative, had a field day at the European Union with extensive support from members of the European Parliament and very positive and goal-oriented conversations with different EU committees, internal market and consumer protection being a especially important one. It all had to do with the first public hearing of the initiative's goals at the European Parliament, and the way the EU is treating the whole thing makes it clear they are taking this seriously. Not only were there discussions about what the initiative means in general, but also, and this is even more important, how to best implement the goals of the initiative. Not a discussion of if, a discussion of how. Of special attention should be the fact that the comments and proposals of the gaming software companies, which as always are trying to avoid responsibility and stall the process, were largely ignored or even dismissed, at least for now. Many of the MEPs have their own direct experiences with gaming and the rest have experiences through their kids, which seems to have been an important motor in the way the initiative was welcomed. The EU is now talking about a right to resurrect when it comes to games, meaning that when a company declares a game end of life or eliminates an important part of the game like servers needed to run it, they have to deliver a solution that allows the game to still be played. Another interesting point is that the European Commission, basically the EU government, is thinking about framing the issue of games going end of life as a question of cultural heritage, which is interesting from two sides at least. First, it's about games at last being seen as part of the overall culture and cultural conversation, an issue many of us have fought for politicians to see this way for decades. Second, it would mean something like a library of end-of-life games where you could go and get the old game. Project Gutenberg for games or something. And before you ask, this is important for us sim racers too. First of all, the trigger for the initiative was the killing of racing game The Crew. Second, we've seen Project Cars 1 and 2 go extinct, and EA are closing the doors on Dirt Rally 2 multiplayer, maybe not coincidentally on the same week where Stop Destroying Games got wide support at the EU. One last point, while this concerns only the EU and there are more countries outside the EU than members of the EU, the power of EU laws is big, as proven by the move of Apple to use USB-C ports on all iPhones after the EU made them mandatory, and this is only one of the more visible examples. A proposal for the how will be submitted by the Commission in July. And that is only the beginning of a long legislative process. Things in the EU take a while because the EU system wants to create stability and avoid extreme disruption. If it means we could maybe still do some DR2 multiplayer in the future, fat chance, or avoid a Project Cars situation in the future, I'm willing to take the time. Another patch dropped for iRacing's 2026 Season 2, and this one's a bit of a mixed bag. A lot of balance of performance updates across multiple car classes, some bug fixes and a handful of smaller additions. Let's start with the UI stuff. The throttle brake widget now has an ABS highlight line. There's also a fix for a performance issue tied to the results tab, a fix for VR users who were seeing UI elements in the wrong position on certain headsets, and a fix for a crash that could happen when loading an HUD profile. And mirrors were occasionally showing up completely black. The patch notes cheerfully point out that they may flicker black at initialization but should become and stay reflective before you even have a chance to put your foot on the gas, which is an enthusiastic way of saying the fix might not be entirely clean. On the NPC side, the Nissan GPT ZXT drivers have apparently improved the racing skills. The Dirt Micro Sprint car gets a notable fix. Gears can now only be selected sequentially and the reverse lockout works as it should. Sounds like it was possible to do some unintended things with the gearbox before. Now the bulk of this patch is balance of performance updates across GT3, GTE and GTP classes. Most changes are small mass and torque adjustments paired with fuel economy tweaks. The Porsche 911 GT3 R992 is the outlier here. It actually gains aerodynamic drag and torque while losing mass, which is a more significant set of changes than the typical nudges everyone else received. The Porsche 911 RSR loses downforce, gains a little mass and gets fuel economy adjustments. Outside of BOP, the Nissan GTP ZXT gets some dedicated physics attention. Better brake cooling for more consistent pad behavior, a grip balance shift from front to rear, reduced overall tire wear and adjusted aero sensitivity on the rear wing and dive planes. A few bug fixes are worth calling out individually. The BMW M8 GTE had paddle shifters that weren't rotating with the steering wheel. The Cadillac GTP could show a misoriented steering wheel in static mode. This one would drive me nuts. The BMW M4 G82 GT4, McLaren 570S GT4 and Porsche 718 Cayman GT4 Club Sport MR had all the same stability control bug where it wasn't activating in left-hand corners. Quite specific, that one. The Dallara IR01 and Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo both had non-translucent window inserts. The HPD ARX01C had opponent dashboards showing completely unreasonable values, and the Aston Martin DBR9 GT1, Chevrolet Corvette C6R GT1 and Ford GT GT2 all had their opponent dashboards displays updated to more reasonable values. On the content side, NASCAR gets a couple of small updates, and finally, iRacing setups have been updated across GT3, GTE, GTP and the Dallara IR18 to reflect the BOP changes. Low Fuel Motorsports has started supporting Assetto Corsa Evo in beta. Issues will happen and you are invited to report them. The newly released Japan DLC from Project Motor Racing has been unreleased at the moment, considering the way the PMR team is tight-lipped and that they have advised us influencers or whatever you want to call us to rather avoid releasing content showing that DLC. There may be some license shenanigans going on. On Friday, PMR released a statement with more legalese wording than my divorce agreement, so it seems quite clear there was a cease and desist or a strongly worded warning by some lawyers or some such. A solid amount of changes in the newest ACEvo patch. Starting under the hood, there are improvements to shared memory mapping and a rework of server browser pings. Basically plumbing work, but it should make things run and feel a bit smoother. On the physics side, there is a tweak to off-track surfaces that should reduce those sudden violent jolts you sometimes get when you clip the grass behind a curb. If you've ever had your wheel yank your arms off from a teeny curb kiss, you know what they're talking about. There were also some car updates. The Mazda MX-5 NA and Caterham 485 CSR are both getting softer tire compounds. The Caterham is also getting increased lift and drag along with an adjusted aero balance. The BMW M3 E46 CSL gets some rear suspension and damper tweaks, and importantly, its downshift autoblip rev matching has now been fixed. Speaking of autoblip, both the Porsche 718 GT4 RS and the 992 GT3 RS have had their downshift timing and autoblip curves updated to better replicate what Porsche calls track mode. Whether or not that actually captures the feel of the real cars is up for debate, but the intention is there. There are also some bug fixes scattered around. The Dallara Stradale had the wrong default tire compound assigned on both the road and track date variants. The Ferrari 296 GT3 gets a brake light emissive fix, and the Lamborghini Countach had opponent brake lights showing the wrong color, which is also sorted. On the content side, a new Porsche Cup livery is included. The Black Falcon Team Fanatic skin and the Porsche 964 Turbo get some customization updates. Sound fans will rejoice here. The Ferrari 288 GTO has received audio updates including a new custom H-pattern gearbox sound, which should be a nice touch. The Ferrari F2004 and SF25 also get sound updates specifically around exterior volume balance. And finally, to track limit adjustments, Road Atlanta gets a slightly wider turn 5 and Sebring has some track limit tweaks as well. Both small changes, but the kind of thing that can quietly improve the racing line options available to you. For more about sim racing, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video if you want to see more like it.